Welcome to the Special Forces in World War II podcast, transmitting on this frequency. This broadcast is your dedicated channel for comprehensive intelligence regarding World War II Special Forces operations. Our transmissions encompass in-depth analysis of their strategic maneuvers, cutting-edge equipment, illustrious biographies, and an array of pertinent subjects. The orchestration of these transmissions is executed by the expert team of the Special Forces in World War II website, a squad deeply immersed in the historical theatre. For further insights, visual aids, and captured moments frozen in time, navigate to our virtual headquarters at worldwar2-soft.com. Your immersion into the front lines of knowledge awaits. Over and out. Welcome back to another episode of the Special Forces in World War II podcast, where we explore the bold, the daring, and the extraordinary stories, tactics, and equipment of the special and specialized forces whose actions helped shape the outcome of the Second World War. I am your host, Michael Weyers, and today we continue our story about Unternehmen Danzig, a journey that has taken us across 6 months of secret preparation, 3 contested bridges, and the longest night in the history of Belgian arms. Today we start with part 2 of the attack on Fort Eben Emael. It is the grey hour before sunrise on May 10th, 1940. Above Fort Eben Emael, the drone of distant engines gives way to a new sound. It is the hiss of gliders in the dark. DFS 230 assault gliders of Sturmgruppe Granit are descending on the most modern fortress in Europe. Each carries 8 Fallschirmjäger and a pilot. Each carries hollow charges of up to 50 kilograms. Each has a named objective on the superstructure of the fort. Inside the fort, around 1,200 Belgian soldiers of the Régiment de Forteresse de Liège stand to their posts. Their armament is designed to break up an attack coming from the Maastricht appendix or from across the Albert Canal. 3 120mm guns in a rotating armored cupola at the heart of the fort. Pairs of 75mm casemates facing north. Observation cupolas. Machine gun blocks. Anti-aircraft positions. Barbed wire. Steel. Concrete. A garrison who has been told that this fort cannot fall. What it is not designed for, and what no one inside has ever rehearsed, is an enemy landing on the grass of its roof. In our first episode, we followed Sturmabteilung Koch from Köln-Ostheim, across Western Germany and through the airspace over the Netherlands, toward the Albert Canal bridges at Vroonhoven, Feldwebel and Cannes, and to Fort Eben Emael itself. We ended that episode with the gliders of Sturmgruppe Granit in the air above Belgium, descending towards the fort in the first light of the invasion of the West. This episode picks up that moment. In the minutes and hours that follow, 10 Gruppen of Fallschirmjäger will attempt to silence the most powerful fortress in Europe from the top down. Below them, in the deep tunnels of the intermediate level, Major Jean-Fritz Lucien Jotron will try to understand what is happening to his fort. This is the story of that morning, and of the long day and night that follow it, of Feldwebel and Oberjäger, sergeant and caporal, of concrete, steel, hollow charges, and held nerve, of men at the sharp edge of a new kind of warfare. This is part 2 of our coverage of Sturmgruppe Granit and the assault on Fort Eben Emael. So, let's start at the beginning. It is 5:25 on May 10th, 1940. Above Fort Eben Emael, the drone of engines gives way to the hiss of gliders. 9 DFS 230S of Sturmgruppe Granit descend on the superstructure. Each carries 8 Fallschirmjäger and a pilot. Each has a named objective. Each lands within seconds of the others. What follows on the flat, grassy roof of the fort happens in parallel, not in sequence. The Belgian garrison below has no warning that the threat is arriving from above. On the northern edge of the superstructure stands Objective 18. The Belgians know it as Maastricht II. It is a north-facing offensive casemate mounting three 75mm guns. Built into its structure is Artillery Observation Post Eben III. Together with its sister casemate Maastricht I, it covers the three northern glider landing zones. If Maastricht II opens fire, the landings on the superstructure cannot continue. The assault on Objective 18 is assigned to Feldwebel Niedermeier and Gruppe 1. Accompanying them, as deputy commander of the Sturmgruppe, is Leutnant Delica. Their glider is flown by Feldwebel Raschke. The approach is fast. Tracer rises from the casemates. Raschke pushes the nose down and weaves through the anti-aircraft fire. The airspeed is too high for a clean touchdown. The glider strikes the ground hard. Delica, Niedermeier, and the men of Gruppe 1 are stunned by the impact. For a moment, nothing moves inside the fuselage. Then the drill takes over. Weapons are readied. Charges are lifted. The doors swing open. Gruppe 1 spills out onto the grass between Maastricht II and the 120mm turret block. Inside the observation post Eben III, two Belgian sergeants man their instruments. They hear nothing unusual. They see nothing on approach. The first sign of the attack is the sound of boots on the armor above their heads. A shout goes down to the gun crews below. Before anyone can react, Obergefreiter Drux and Feldwebel Niedermeier place a hollow charge against the cupola and fire it. The detonation does not punch through. It leaves a shallow crater in the steel. But the shock wave inside the dome is brutal. Steel fragments shear loose from the inner surface of the armor. Both sergeants in the observation post are killed where they stand. Niedermeier shifts his men to the first embrasure. Obergefreiter Kramer and Obergefreiter Graf carry forward a 12.5 kilogram shaped charge and set it against the muzzle of gun number 1. The charge fires. The 75mm gun is torn clean from its mounting. The weapon tumbles backwards into the gun chamber and strikes the defenders behind it. The blast opens a hole in the embrasure wall measuring 60 by 60 centimeters. Niedermeier and two Fallschirmjäger crawl to the edge of the opening. Grenades go in first. Then they follow, firing their MP-38s. Inside gun chamber 1, two Belgian gunners are already dead. One is wounded. Others are burned or concussed by the blast. Two signalers cannot be found. As the wounded are dragged deeper into the casemate and down towards the intermediate level, a 3-kilogram charge is placed inside the barrel of gun number 2 and detonated. The second barrel splits open. Sergeant Poncelet, commanding Maastricht II, orders the remaining crew to fall back to the lower level. The Germans pursue down the stairway behind them. Belgian hands slam the lower airlock doors shut. The intermediate level is sealed. Above, machine gun fire still rattles across the grass. Smoke and dust choke the gun chambers. The breach in the embrasure is wide enough for a man, but nothing can be seen through it. Niedermeier waits until the air clears, then leads two Fallschirmjäger in, wearing gas masks. Short bursts of MP-38 fire are sent down the stairwell to keep the Belgians retreating. On the intermediate level, Poncelet's men prepare for a German push into the tunnel system. Steel beams are dropped into their channels behind the doors. Sandbags are packed hard between the leaves. Caporal Verbois, mortally wounded in the gun chamber above, is carried out through the shattered embrasure. There is no means to treat him. He dies shortly afterwards. 3 Belgian defenders lie dead. 17 are wounded. Within the opening minutes of the assault on the superstructure, a second offensive casemate has been silenced. Of the remaining artillery positions on the roof, 3 are under direct attack by other Gruppen. 2 are not being engaged at all, most likely because intelligence preparation did not identify them. Then, from the south, a new danger rises. Fire from Cupola Sud begins to fall close to Maastricht too. Niedermeier pulls his men back inside the captured casemate for cover. He dispatches Obergefreiter Drucks north across the open grass with a single task: find Oberleutnant Witzig. Report that Objective 18 is taken. Around the silenced guns, Gruppe 1 reorganizes. Prisoners are gathered. Glider pilots not tied up with prisoner handling drag out aircraft recognition panels and lay them on the grass beside the captured casemate. Above Belgium, Junker 87 dive bombers are already aloft, waiting on call for Sturmgruppe Granit. The panels tell the pilots where the Germans are. They tell them where not to aim. On the superstructure, Maastricht 2 has fallen silent. Elsewhere on the roof, at the same minute of the same morning, all across the superstructure, other Gruppen are already working on their objectives. But at the very center of the upper surface of Fort Eben Emael, at Objective 24, nothing is happening at all. Objective 24 is Cupola 120. It is the fort's most powerful weapon. Inside its rotating armored dome sit twin 120mm guns. Externally, it closely resembles the false cupolas at Objectives 14 and 16, further north. Those objectives have already been struck by other Gruppen of Sturmgruppe Granit. Cupola 120 has not. The cupola has been assigned to Feldwebel Max Meier and Gruppe 2. Their DFS 230 glider is not there. Earlier in the approach, far to the east over German territory, its tow rope parted. Gruppe 2 is no longer part of the assault. No charges are placed on the armor of Cupola 120. No boots strike its roof. In the opening minutes of the battle, the most dangerous position on the superstructure stands entirely untouched. This is a grave problem. German armored spearheads are pushing westward towards the Albert Canal. They will soon enter the effective range of the 120mm guns. 2 working guns of that caliber, firing from the high ground of the fort, can break up the advance long before it reaches the crossings. Inside the cupola, Sergeant René Kremer stares through a gun sight. He can see fragments of the battle through it, no more. The cupola has no functioning periscope. To look at the ground around him, the whole armored dome must traverse. The traverse is slow. His field of view is narrow. He reports what he sees to the command post inside the fort. He sees gliders skidding to a halt on the grass. He hears the dull hammer blows of hollow charges detonating against the neighboring casemates. He cannot see who is placing them. He cannot see how many Germans are on the surface. The command post asks for detail. He cannot give it. Traversing again, Kremer catches sight of a group of Fallschirmjäger sheltering beneath the wing of a glider between Cupola Nord and his own position. He reports them at once and requests permission to open fire. The request travels down through the fort. An order comes back. Engage targets on the slope in front of Block 1. Use shells with very short delay fuses. The order is passed inside the cupola. The turret begins to traverse. Ammunition is placed into the hoist. Then the trouble begins. The hoist ceases to function. The ammunition loader reaches for the loading pincers and finds that the shafts are missing. A man is sent to the repair workshop to find them. The rest of the crew tries to work around the failure. They begin prizing open ammunition crates by hand. The command post is informed that the hoist is inoperative. Without pincers, the crew uses pocket knives and hammers on the ammunition boxes. Eventually, the surface clearance shells are freed from their crates and manhandled up to the guns. Kremer has no working sight on the target. He sights down the barrel of one gun to lay the piece. He sees at once that the line of fire passes directly above Cupola Nord. A round fired on this bearing will clear the neighboring cupola by a narrow margin, and nothing more. Even so, the decision is made to fire. Before a round can go off, another fault appears in the turret mechanism. Caporal van Geleuven reports that the counterweight components cannot be separated. Kremer leaves observers at the sight telescope in the dugout and descends to the intermediate level to inspect the trouble himself. The inspection is grim. The clutch will not disengage. The counterweight will not drop. Attempts to cycle the loading mechanism by hand also fail. Either the weight of the shell is too great or the pressure from the rammer is too weak. Each attempt ends the same way. The mechanism returns to its original position. No round is chambered. No round is fired. Caporal van Geleuven keeps working at it. He is an experienced man. He also says plainly that he doubts the mechanism can be restored. No charge has been placed on the cupola. No grenade has been thrown into it. No Fallschirmjäger has touched it. And yet, as the assault rages across the superstructure, the twin 120mm guns at the heart of Fort Eben Emael do not fire a single round. The most powerful weapon on the plateau is silent. The Belgian crew stays at their posts, buried in repair work, while the battle above them is decided by other men on other objectives. While Kremer and van Geleuven fight their cupola's broken machinery in silence, across the superstructure, the assault on the last of the offensive artillery positions is already underway. The final gun casemate capable of threatening the bridges is Maastricht 1. It is the western sister to Niedermeier's Maastricht 2 and mounts three 75mm guns. If Maastricht 1 opens fire, the crossings at Vroonhoven, Veldwezelt, and Kana remain in range. Its destruction is essential. Maastricht 1 is assigned to Feldwebel Arent and Gruppe 3 of Sturmgruppe Granit. Two further tasks fall to Arent after the main objective is taken. He is to destroy the generator exhaust tower. He is to act against Block 2. Neither forms part of the offensive artillery system. Both are rated low priority. Gruppe 3's glider is flown by Hauptfeldwebel Supper. Over the fort, Supper does not find a clean approach. He circles the superstructure once and then a second time. On the final run-in, at about 30 meters above the grass, machine gun fire reaches up for him. Supper throws the DFS 230 into a steep banking dive. The glider slams down and skids across the surface. It comes to rest roughly 20 meters east of the objective. Arent is first out of the fuselage. He urges his men forward. They are slowed by the weight of the shaped charges. They cover the last meters under fire and reach the casemate wall. There is no obvious way in. Arent's men search for an external access door. They find none. The casemate is silent. It has no observation cupola and no visible embrasure for a sentry. The only opening is the muzzle of each gun. Arent orders the charges placed on the barrels. The first attempt fails. The preservation grease on the barrels prevents the charges from adhering to the steel. A 50-kilogram charge is brought forward and offered to the embrasure of gun number 1. The embrasure is too small. The charge will not fit. Arent calls for a 12.5-kilogram charge instead. He carries it himself to the base of gun number 3 and fixes it against the ball joint where the barrel meets its mounting. He lights the fuse. He turns away for cover. His men do not withdraw far enough. They have trained on mock casemates for months. They know these walls. Familiarity betrays them. When the charge fires, the blast throws the Fallschirmjäger to the ground and stuns them. They lie in the grass for a few seconds, winded, before they can move again. Inside Maastricht 1, the blast does terrible work. The Belgian gunner Langelen is hurled from his post beside the gun into the telephone room. The 75mm gun is torn from its mounting and flung across the chamber. It crushes Soldat Bormann against the ventilator before tumbling into the stairwell, where it wedges and comes to rest. Daylight punches through the breach. With it comes dust and smoke. The explosion has set fire to the propellant charges of the 75mm ammunition. Thick black smoke starts to fill the casemate. The electric lights fail. The air turns to the smell of burning cordite. Men groan in the dark. Surgeon Gigon is badly concussed. He can barely stand. He hears wounded men calling out and follows their voices. He finds 2 of them, takes them by the arms, and gets them down the stairs to the lower level. He comes back up for more. The fire is taking hold now. The propellant charges are burning fiercely. Smoke is so thick that his gas mask clogs, and he cannot breathe. As he reaches the chamber a 3rd time, he hears short bursts of MP-38 fire. 9mm parabellum rounds crack off the concrete walls around him. He turns and staggers back down the stairwell and falls into the arms of one of his own men. Before he is taken to the fort hospital, Gigon finds Lieutenant Deuce on the intermediate level. Deuce is gathering gunners for a counterattack up to the gun chamber. Gigon reports what he has left behind. Wounded men are still in the chamber. Enemy movement above is clearly audible. On the superstructure, Arent is back on his feet. He comes up to the breach. It measures less than 60 centimeters square and is torn through both concrete and steel. Oily smoke pours out of it. He throws 2 hand grenades in through the opening. When they have gone off, he swings his legs through and goes in feet first. Inside, the air is black. He moves by touch. He finds a Belgian gunner, barely conscious but not seriously injured. He drags the man to the opening. Gefreiter Kupsch and Gefreiter Stop have come in behind him. They take the prisoner out through the breach. Arent finds 2 more Belgian soldiers in the chamber. One has gunshot wounds. Both are pulled out onto the grass. The remaining Belgian crew, under further grenades, fresh explosions, and sustained MP fire, withdraws down to the lower level. Maastricht 1 is in German hands. Then the fire from Cupola Sud, the same fire that has just driven Niedermeier's men into cover at Maastricht 2, begins to fall around Maastricht 1. Arent pulls his section into the casemate for shelter. Inside, Arent notices a stairway descending into the fort. He pauses at the top of it and listens. Below him, Belgian boots are coming back up. A counterattack is forming in the shaft. To break it up before it arrives, Arent drops a 2.5-kilogram charge down the stairway. The detonation in the confined space is catastrophic. The concussion throws the Fallschirmjäger in the casemate against the concrete walls. They are stunned, but not wounded. From below comes silence. The remaining interior lighting goes out. Arent takes 2 men and starts down the stairs. They count their way down. 118 steps. At the bottom, they find 2 heavy steel doors, barring further access into the fort. Hours later, Arent returns to the doors with a 50-kilogram charge. He shortens the fuse and fires it. The blast kills 6 Belgian defenders on the far side. It wrecks the staircase behind him to the surface. The doors still hold. Arent cannot force them. He withdraws back to the roof. By then, the artillery fire from Cupola Sud has fallen silent. Trupp 3 does not wait. It turns straight onto Block 2. A hollow charge goes against the position and neutralizes it. The section settles between Maastricht 1 and Block 2, in the ground between the captured casemate and the silence block. From this position, it disrupts every Belgian patrol that tries to approach. And in a final reversal that none of the Belgian gunners of Maastricht 1 can have imagined an hour earlier, Arendt's men, man 1 of the 75mm guns left intact in the casemate and turn it on the patrols below, while Arendt's section is still fighting inside Maastricht 1, and while Kremer's crew, below Cupola 120, is still wrestling with a jammed hoist, Objective 19 is already being attacked on the other side of the superstructure. Objective 19 is Mi Sud. Its task is to dominate the open upper surface of the fort. Its armament reflects that task. 3 heavy machine guns, 2 armored searchlights, 1 artillery observation cupola, 1 light machine gun covering the entrance. On top of the block sits observation post Eben 2. If Mi Sud opens up with its heavy machine guns, it can sweep the grass across the top of the fort. The southern casemates, where the main body of Sturmgruppe Granit is now working, lie fully within its field of fire. A single sustained burst from Mi Sud can cut Gruppe 1, Gruppe 3, and the other attacking sections apart in the open. Its neutralization is not optional, it is critical. Only a small part of the Mi Sud crew is at action stations. They have descended to the lower level on their own initiative. The rest are still outside the fort, assisting with the evacuation of the external barracks. Shortly before 5:30, 2 Belgian non-commissioned officers, Vossen and Bataille, climb up into observation post Eben 2 on top of the block. Through the periscope, they see the gliders. They see figures moving on the grass. Before they can act on what they see, an explosion strikes their position. The assault is led by Feldwebel Wenzel. His glider touches down 80 meters from the target. Wenzel smashes his nose on landing and comes out bleeding, but he is on his feet and moving at once. He does not wait for the rest of Gruppe 4 to form up. He goes straight for the block. Vossen and Bataille spot him coming. They open fire. Wenzel goes right, up the earth bank that rises against the side of the block and onto the roof. On the top of the observation cloche is a small opening for the periscope. As the Germans appear, the periscope is withdrawn from below, leaving a clear hole in the armor. Wenzel is carrying a 1-kilogram charge fitted with a 4-second fuse. He arms it, he waits, counts, and drops it through the periscope opening into the observation post below. At the same moment, the rest of Gruppe 4 reaches the block with the heavy equipment. A 50-kilogram hollow charge is manhandled up onto the cupola and placed directly on top of it. It is fired. Both explosions do their work. Vossen and Bataille are killed in the observation post. The Gruppe shifts to the south-facing machine gun embrasure. A 12.5-kilogram charge is set against it and detonated. The armor holds. The charge does not penetrate, but the concussion inside the casemate is brutal. The Belgian crew on the machine gun can no longer function at their position. They pull back. A second 50-kilogram charge is brought up. It arrives in 2 parts. While it is assembled, the rest of the Gruppe moves into firing positions in the bushes in front of the rampart. The machine gunner Poulsen opens up on the machine gun embrasures, keeping Belgian heads down. The assembled charge is suspended directly in front of an embrasure and fired. Even at 4 meters from the blast, the shock wave is severe. The concrete wall of the casemate is torn open. The breach is large enough for men to enter. At the same time, another 12.5 kilogram charge destroys the south-facing machine gun embrasure completely. Wenzel goes in first. Several men follow him. Inside the block, the air is thick with smoke. The machine gun crew is dead at its post. The searchlight is destroyed. At that moment, inside the wrecked block, the internal telephone rings. Wenzel picks it up. A voice speaks to him in French. He does not understand French. He answers in English. He tells the voice simply that the Germans are here. On the other end, the voice goes into shock. Wenzel's men work quickly to secure their prize. A signal flag is laid out on the roof. The overflying Luftwaffe pilots circling above the fort can now see where the Germans are and where they are not. Defensive firing positions are established around the captured block. The interior is swept and held against counterattack. From the roof of Mi Sud, the view is commanding. Most of the fort's upper surface lies open to observation, with only the southern and western slopes hidden by vegetation. Wenzel sees at once what he has. He establishes a command post against the rampart beside the block. Gruppe 4 takes up a defensive perimeter around it. Mi Sud is no longer a threat to the men assaulting the southern casemates. It has become the eyes of Sturmgruppe Granit, and within minutes of its capture, it becomes something more. It becomes the German command post on the roof of Fort Eben Emael. Wenzel and Gruppe 4 now wait. They wait for Oberleutnant Witzig to arrive and take command. While Wenzel is setting up his command post beside Mi Sud, and while Cupola Nord begins to throw its shells across the superstructure, Gruppe 5 is already in action on the southwestern edge of the fort. Gruppe 5 is commanded by Feldwebel Haug. His glider is flown by Feldwebel Hübel. The objectives are the anti-aircraft position and Block 4. On final approach, the DFS 230 meets heavy resistance. Belgian machine guns on both sides of the landing zone open fire as it descends. The fire gives the target away. Muzzle flashes cut through the half-light. Lange steers the glider directly at them. Bullets punch through the fabric skin and strike the steel frame underneath. The pilot presses on, low and fast. He comes in extremely low. The left wing strut clips the edge of a machine gun position and tears the weapon clean from its pit. The glider skids to a halt immediately next to the second emplacement. One Belgian gun has been knocked flat by the impact. The second is still in action, a few meters away. Lange does not wait. He unbuckles his harness, opens the cockpit, and climbs onto the edge of the glider. He jumps straight down into the shallow pit of the first emplacement. In his right hand is a pistol. In his left, a dagger. 4 Belgian gunners are sheltering inside. They look up at the pilot, who has just landed in their pit, and surrender on the spot. At the same moment, Haug throws a steel hand granate into the same pit. He has no way of knowing Lange is already inside. The grenade malfunctions. Only the detonator functions. No one is injured. Friendly casualties are avoided by a margin of a second and a defective fuse. Haug sees Lange has the position and turns his attention to the second pit. 3 Belgian gunners there are still firing sustained bursts. Haug pushes forward with the rest of Gruppe 5. 2 Fallschirmjäger rush the pit, firing their MP-38s as they move. A second steel hand granate goes in after them. This one detonates fully. 1 Belgian soldier is killed. The other 2 are stunned and taken prisoner. With the anti-aircraft crews neutralized, Gruppe 5 turns towards the nearby hut to help suppress the resistance there. Lange stays behind to handle the prisoners. He orders them out of the pits. More Belgian gunners appear from neighboring positions, hands raised. Langer, a single man with a pistol, suddenly finds himself the escort for between 14 and 16 prisoners. Defenders at a rear window of the block now open fire outwards, across the fort roof towards Cupola Nord and Gruppe 8. Looking across the roof, Haug sees trouble by Cupola Nord. The glider of Feldwebel Unger has landed under heavy fire. One man lies wounded on the wing. The rest of the section is pinned down. Haug pushes forward to help and comes under fire himself. The two sections combine their strength. Together, they destroy the offending machine gun position at close quarters. The price is high. 2 men of the combined force are killed. 1 is badly wounded. Several others are hurt. And despite the damage done to it, Cupola Sud resumes fire across the fort roof a short time later. At the center of the superstructure, Cupola 120 still stands. Its twin 120mm guns have still not fired. Responsibility for its destruction lies with Feldwebel Meier and Gruppe 2. No one knows where Meier is. His location is unknown to everyone on the roof. Inside the cupola, Sergeant Kremer is still at his gun sight. At 5:30, he has ordered his gunners to engage. When his crew tries to work the ammunition hoists and rammers, electrical power fails on top of the existing mechanical faults. Repairs are attempted under pressure. No round has yet left the barrels. It is at this moment that Heinemann walks into the picture again. The pilot, now a wounded man, is escorting his prisoners towards headquarters. His route takes him past Cupola 120. As he approaches, the twin barrels begin to traverse. They swing towards him. Seconds later, shells from Cupola Sud land close by and wound him in several places. Lang shouts to his prisoners to lie flat. He leaves them face down on the grass. Bleeding, he goes back to his glider and drags out a 50-kilogram hollow charge. He carries it alone to Cupola 120, sets it on the armor, and fires it. The explosion does no visible damage to the massive structure. Another man of Trupp 5 arrives at the cupola. This is Grechser. He has been drinking earlier and is intoxicated. He climbs up onto the 120mm gun barrels themselves as they continue to rotate, riding the rotating steel while Belgian gunners try to bring their weapons into action below him. Oberfeldwebel Wenzel arrives from Mi Sud. He carries 3-kilogram charges. He places one inside each of the 2 barrels. The charges fire. Inside the cupola, the gunners are killed. The casemate is disabled. The twin 120mm guns of Cupola 120, the most powerful weapon on Fort Eben Emael, the one Gruppe 2 was to have destroyed in the opening minute of the attack, never fire a round into the advancing German armor. They are silenced in the end, not by Feldwebel Meier, but by a wounded glider pilot, an intoxicated Fallschirmjäger, and the Oberfeldwebel who has just set up the command post at Mi Sud. Meanwhile, 2 further Gruppen are already moving across the northern part of the superstructure. The northern cupolas are designated Objectives 14 and 16. German intelligence has assessed these positions as among the most powerful elements of the fort's armament. Both are believed to be 120mm artillery cupolas, a matching pair to Cupola 120 at the center. They stand at the northern apex of the fort. Because the threat they appear to represent is so serious, each objective is assigned a full Gruppe of Sturmgruppe Granit. Feldwebel Fritz Heinemann leads Gruppe 7. Feldwebel Siegfried Harlos leads Gruppe 6. Their objectives are the 2 northern turret blocks. The assault on them goes in at the same moment as the attacks on Maastricht 1, Maastricht 2, Mi Nord, and the anti-aircraft position further south. The two Gruppen land to the northeast and northwest of Mi Sud. The landing points place them between roughly 140 meters and 160 meters from their objectives. For airborne troops already on the grass, that is a long way to move under fire, with heavy charges on their backs. Harlos and Heinemann start their men forward at once. Almost immediately, they run into obstacles. Extensive barbed wire entanglements cross the open surface of the fort. The Gruppen deploy Bangalore torpedoes. The explosive tubes blow lanes through the wire. The assault sections press on through the gaps. As they close on the two northern blocks, Harlos and Heinemann see what they have. The armored turrets in the northern angle of the fort are not 120mm cupolas. They are light metal decoys. The Belgian deception has worked exactly as intended. It holds the attention of two full Gruppen for the critical opening minutes of the assault and causes brief confusion at the objectives themselves. Beyond that, it has no influence on the outcome. German intelligence has also identified another cupola, designated Objective 32, located beyond the southern boundary of the fort. That position is likewise a false installation. Either its true nature has been recognized in advance, or its location is judged beyond the practical reach of the airborne assault. Either way, it is ignored by the Fallschirmjäger. No attempt is made to attack it. Harlos and Heinemann do not waste their men on empty shells of steel. They reorient at once. The two Gruppen establish defensive positions facing west towards the Gier River. On the northern edge of the superstructure, they now guard against any Belgian counterattack coming up the slope from that direction. 8 full Gruppen were assigned to Fort Eben Emael. 1 has failed to arrive. 2 have been drawn onto decoys. The remaining 5, scattered across the superstructure, are doing the work of 8. And at this moment, their commanding officer, Oberleutnant Witzig, is still not on the fort. At the southern edge of the superstructure, the very first glider of Sturmgruppe Granit is already on the ground. It has touched down a full minute before many of the others. The first to land are Oberjäger Unger and Gruppe 8. Their glider is piloted by pilot Niedermeier. At 300 meters, Niedermeier begins circling to lose height. The glider drops steeply towards the fort. Anti-aircraft machine guns reach up for it. He pushes the nose down, loses altitude quickly, and flies low. He swings south and approaches Objective 31 from that direction. The glider touches down at 0524, 30 meters from Cupola Nord. The men are out almost before the glider stops moving. Each Fallschirmjäger grabs his 25-kilogram explosive load and runs for the cupola. Inside Cupola Nord, Sergeant Joris has his eye on the periscope. He sees the gliders setting down on the open ground to the north. He lowers the retractable cupola into its chamber and reports to the command post that aircraft have landed near Mi Nord. Outside, the situation changes in an instant. Belgian troops, sheltering in the nearby hangar at Objective 25, open fire on Gruppe 8. Unger's section is the first on the ground and the closest to the hangar. They draw most of the small arms fire in the opening seconds of the assault. Unger is out, Bruno Hugi is out, Ernst Hierländer is out. Feldwebel Meier goes down wounded only meters from the glider. Rhine takes cover beside the fuselage, drops the bipod of his MG-34 onto the ground, feeds the 7.92mm belt, and returns fire on the hangar. Under the cover of Rhine's MG-34, Gefreiter Elsa and Gefreiter Pleats break from cover and run for the hangar building. As they close on the door, Feldwebel Haug's section appears from the direction of the anti-aircraft position. Haug has already taken his own objective. He joins the fight at the hangar without hesitation. Else sets a 2.5 kilogram conventional charge against the door and fires it. The blast does its work. Inside the hangar, Soldat Remy and Soldat Heine are killed. Adjutant Longdos is wounded. A potentially dangerous Belgian force, led by an officer, is eliminated within minutes of the landing. While the hangar is being cleared, Unger, Huger, and Hierländer run the last meters to Cupola Nord. Inside the cupola, Sergeant Joris is shouting for ammunition. Cupola Nord has not yet received its allocation of boîtes à balles. With those close-range anti-personnel rounds, the 75mm guns could sweep the surface at point-blank range and cut the Fallschirmjäger down on the grass. No one has planned for close combat this early. No one has expected an enemy on the roof. Instead, Soldat Hanot arrives at the turret with 2 high-explosive rounds carried up from the magazine below. The rounds go into the breeches. The crew prepares to raise the cupola to firing position. Then the cupola is shaken by a violent explosion. From beside his glider, pilot Distelmeyer sees it. 2 men, Unger's pioneers, place a 50-kilogram hollow charge on the armor of Cupola Nord and fire it. The detonation is immense. The ground under Distelmeyer heaves. He is thrown into the air. With that blast, Cupola Nord is out of action. Inside, the crew experiences the explosion as it penetrates the steel. The guns are twisted in their mountings. The ammunition mechanism is wrecked. Control cables are severed. The cupola is neutralized before it has fired a single round. Obergefreiter Elsa now sights a machine gun to provide covering fire across the area. At 5:30, Sergeants Kipp and Joris are still manning the 75mm guns of Cupola Nord, reporting enemy movement on the fort roof to the command post below. It is while Joris is carrying anti-personnel ammunition up the stairway that the first heavy charge has detonated above him. At that instant, no one is inside the turret itself. On the surface, Unger sees no external damage on the cupola and is taking no chances. He orders a second 50-kilogram charge placed near the steel exit door of the block. It fires. The explosion disables the electrical systems inside and renders the cupola fully inoperable. Unger then posts a man to watch the heavy steel door of the infantry sally port. This is the most likely direction of any counterattack by the garrison. He places a 12.5-kilogram hollow charge against the door and fires it. The blast rips the door from its hinges. Large blocks of concrete collapse into the opening and seal it. No Belgian infantry can now come out this way. The garrison does not try to counterattack. Instead, they bring a machine gun into action. It is sighted to fire at the Fallschirmjäger working on other structures along the southern edge of the fort. A 2.5-kilogram charge is placed beneath its mount. It fails to silence the weapon. With the Germans already established on the upper surface and his own men sheltering beneath concrete, Major Jotron inside the fort now requests artillery support from the headquarters of the position fortifié de Liège. Within minutes, friendly artillery fire begins to fall on the superstructure of Fort Eben Emael. Unger completes his last task near Cupola Nord. Across the grass, he sees a signal. It comes, most likely, from Feldwebel Wenzel or one of his men at the new command post at Mi Nord. The signal orders Unger to move to Mi Nord. He orders Gruppe 8 to disperse into open formation to reduce losses under the incoming shells. The section starts across the grass. As they cross scrub at the crest of the Tranchée de Kester, a shell fragment strikes Oberjäger Unger. He is killed instantly. Of Gruppe 8, only Obergefreiter Elsa and 2 other Fallschirmjäger reach Wenzel's command post. Elsa takes command of what remains of the Gruppe. Up to this point, Sturmgruppe Granit is suffering unusually light casualties. The sections that breach the casemates are well protected from Belgian fire. They must still leave cover to complete their neutralization tasks or to move across open ground towards Mi Nord to form the defensive perimeter. It is on that open ground that losses are now beginning to occur. At 5:45, Major Jotrand orders the tunnel beneath Cupola Nord sealed and the block abandoned. The Belgian crew retreats down the stairway. The airlock doors at the base of the block are closed behind them. Steel beams are dropped into their channels. Sandbags are packed between the leaves. On the upper surface, the Germans do not follow. They hold the roof. The Belgians hold everything below it. And between them, in the sealed stairwells of the fort, a silent division of the battlefield is taking shape. While Unger's men are still working on Cupola Nord, and while Elsa is clearing the hangar, the other southern machine gun block is already under assault by Gruppe 9. Mi Sud is the twin of Wenzel's Mi Nord. Its 3 embrasures dominate the open upper surface of the fort from the south. Its machine guns, if they come into action, can sweep the grass where the Fallschirmjäger are working on the artillery casemates. Combined with Mi Nord, the 2 blocks form an interlocking fire plan designed to cut down any attacker on the roof. Mi Sud must fall, and it must fall fast. Mi Sud is assigned to Oberjäger Neuhaus and Gruppe 9. Their DFS 230 assault glider is piloted by Hauptfeldwebel Schultz. On the run-in near Maastricht, the glider meets anti-aircraft fire. It is shaken, but stays in the air. Schultz brings it down approximately 45 meters east of the objective. The men tumble out of the fuselage straight into barbed wire. The obstacle is dense. It catches their equipment at once. Unlike the southern artillery positions and the anti-aircraft emplacements, Mi Sud is protected by extensive entanglements of wire. Cutting a way through is the first battle. Neuhaus leads, cutting as he goes. At first, the block in front of them appears abandoned, and in this, they have been lucky in a way the planners could not have foreseen. The crews of Mi Nord and Mi Sud are expected to be among the last Belgian teams into action. Their weapons are intended for use only after an enemy advances on the fort from Maastricht, not in the opening seconds of an attack from above. At the moment the gliders come down, both crews are outside their casemates. They are moving documents into the interior of the fort. They are destroying the external barrack blocks. Both machine gun bunkers stand empty at the critical moment. This is not something German planning has predicted. It is chance combined with operational surprise, and it is decisive. While Neuhaus and his men struggle through the wire, fire begins to come in from other Belgian positions. The first bursts come from the area of the hangar, the same hangar that Gruppe 8 is now fighting at. Clothing and webbing snag on the wire. Progress slows. Behind Neuhaus, the men following through the breach are carrying hollow charges and a flamethrower. Fire from the southern sector becomes so intense that the Fallschirmjäger are forced to take cover on the northern side of the earth bank. Only when Elsa's men clear the hangar and Adjutant Longdos and his party are neutralized can Gruppe 9 resume its advance. Neuhaus and 2 soldiers crawl forward and work their way around the side of the casemate. By now, the situation has changed. The Belgian crew has returned. Mi Sud is manned. The south-facing machine gun opens fire. Fallschirmjäger Ernst Schlosser moves wide of the field of fire and maneuvers the flamethrower into position. A jet of dark, smoking flame pours into the embrasure. The Belgian machine gun crew inside is forced to cease firing. This is the opening Neuhaus needs. A 12.5 kilogram charge is carried forward and placed against the embrasure. The fuse is lit. The men withdraw. Inside the casemate, the Belgian crew has recovered. They watch the charge being set through the sight opening. They react fast. They open the breech of their machine gun, push a cleaning rod up the barrel from inside, and work the tip against the charge until it falls back off the embrasure. It drops to the ground and detonates there, with little effect on the block. Neuhaus brings up more explosives. 2 more 12.5 kilogram charges go in. 3 50 kilogram hollow charges follow in succession. The south-facing embrasure is destroyed. A 50 kilogram hollow charge is then placed against the observation bell on top of the block. The detonation penetrates the armor. The blast opens a man-sized breach. Grenades go in through it to clear whatever is left inside. Belgian defenders abandon the block after only a brief defense and withdraw to the intermediate level. When Neuhaus finally enters Mi Sud, he finds several Belgian soldiers inside, stunned and left behind in the retreat. They are secured as prisoners. Neuhaus does not pursue down into the fort. He blocks the steel sallyport door. Another 50 kilogram hollow charge is set against it and fired. The door is torn inwards. The frame is wrenched from the surrounding structure. His secondary task is to cover the assault elements operating in the northern sector of the fort. He positions his men in firing points inside the casemate and along the eastern slope. From here, they can see and fire across the ground where Harlos and Heinemann have just discovered the decoy turrets. No immediate threat develops from the north. Neuhaus organizes a defensive perimeter around the captured block. He sends a runner back through the wire to find Oberleutnant Rudolf Witzig. The runner carries a single message: Mi Sud has been captured. Gruppe 9 is ready for further orders. But across the superstructure, the man who is to receive those orders is still not present. Oberleutnant Witzig is not on the fort. While Neuhaus secures Mi Sud and waits for orders, the last of the Sturmgruppe's gliders is already on the ground. It is the reserve section, held back for wherever it is needed most. Feldwebel Hübel commands Troop 10. His glider lands without opposition, less than 100 meters south of VC1. A runner goes straight off towards platoon headquarters to report their position. But platoon headquarters, as it was planned, does not exist on the fort. Oberleutnant Witzig is still not present. In his place, Oberfeldwebel Wenzel at Mi Nord assumes command of Sturmgruppe Granit. Wenzel has his first decision to make as acting commander. He makes it without delay. He orders an attack on VC1. VC1 is set into the large earth bank on the eastern edge of the fort. The casemate is oriented to engage targets to the south. From this position, its crew has a clear view of everything unfolding along the southern edge of the superstructure. The position mounts 3 75mm guns. It is the missing objective of the assault plan. It is the one Feldwebel Meier and Gruppe 2 were supposed to attack. With Meier's glider down somewhere in Germany, VC1 has stood untouched during the opening phase of the battle. Inside the casemate, the Belgian situation is already poor. At 5:35, the gun crews receive a general order to fire several salvos. Almost immediately, Junker 87 dive bombers sweep across the fort and force the gunners down to the intermediate level. At the same moment, the detonations from hollow charges on the neighboring positions ripple through the earth bank and blow the air intake valves off the interior fittings of the casemate. The gunners have no way to counter either effect. Morale inside Vise 1 deteriorates rapidly. Hübel is now on his way to Mi Nord to form the reserve around Sturmgruppe Granit headquarters when the runner comes back with new orders. The Gruppe is to attack Vise 1. Hübel turns about and begins his preparations. Within 5 minutes of the first charge going on, the observation cupola of Vise 1 is destroyed. Above the fort, Junker 87s remain on call. They circle in sight of the Belgian defenders throughout this phase of the battle. Their presence alone exerts constant pressure on every position still in action. After a short interval, the Belgian crew comes back up to their guns. At 6 o'clock, Sous-Lieutenant Deslouve and Soldat Delcourt fire several salvos from Vise 1. Shortly afterwards, the officer is recalled to the command post. Without him, the crew again falls back toward the intermediate level. At 6:10, Major Jean-Fritz Lucien Jotron issues a new order. A general fire is to be laid down, intended partly to occupy the crews and steady them. But the Belgian guns are not directed against the Fallschirmjäger on the upper surface. The trajectory of the shells passes clean over the German positions. Inside Vise 1, the situation is becoming confused. At 6:40, the command post prematurely reports to the headquarters of the position Fortifié de Liège that the casemate has been knocked out by German action. 5 minutes later, an unsettled crew inside the casemate itself transmits a different report. They claim direct bomb hits on the structure. They can hear German movement on the outside of the casemate. At 7 o'clock, worsening conditions inside Vise 1, caused chiefly by the destroyed ventilation, force the crew to withdraw once again to the intermediate level. On the superstructure of Fort Eben Emael, every Gruppe of Sturmgruppe Granit has now been accounted for on the plateau. 8 of the 10 Gruppen have reached their objectives and pressed home the assault. Gruppe 2 is still missing. Gruppe 10 has been redirected to the gap. Gruppe 2 has left. Acting command sits with Oberfeldwebel Wenzel at Mi Nord. Somewhere to the east, Oberleutnant Rudolf Witzig is still trying to reach his battle. Oberleutnant Rudolf Witzig, the commander of Unternehmen Granit, also commands Gruppe 11. His glider never reaches Fort Eben Emael with the main Sturmgruppe. Shortly after crossing the river Rhine, the towing rope parts. Most men in his position would consider the mission over. Witzig does not. He has brought his command this far. He refuses to abandon the operation. He also refuses to allow his men to attack Fort Eben Emael without him. He gives his glider pilot one instruction: fly back across the Rhine into Germany and find a meadow large enough for both a landing and a renewed takeoff. The glider comes down in such a meadow. Witzig orders it unloaded. He has the aircraft dragged to the edge of the field and reloaded. He orders his men out to clear the hedges and fences nearby. He is trying to improvise a takeoff strip from a German pasture. While the men work, Witzig leaves the field. He sets out on foot. He stops a railway worker and requisitions his bicycle. Further down the road, he flags down a medical officer and requisitions his motor vehicle. In this fashion, by foot and bicycle and staff car, he reaches the Luftwaffe headquarters at Köln-Ostheim. At the airfield, he finds a flight commander who understands what is at stake. Acting on his own authority, the officer secures a reserve Junker 52 from General der Flieger Kurt Student. A parachute is issued to Witzig in case landing at the field becomes impossible. Preparations are made to resume the mission at once. The Junker 52 climbs away from Köln-Ostheim with Witzig aboard. In the air, He briefs the pilot on the situation. He gives precise instructions for the landing site. At 6:05, the Junker 52 returns to the meadow where Gruppe 11 is waiting. The pilot lands. He taxis to the edge of the field where the glider stands ready. The engines are kept running. The tow rope is reattached without delay. The order is given. The next stop is Aachen. The route follows the same westward course the original formation has flown. The assigned tow altitude is 750 meters. The renewed departure takes place under clear morning conditions. The glider is released over German territory. On the flight westwards, Luftwaffe formations pass overhead, heading towards the front. In the distance, small bursts of anti-aircraft fire appear intermittently against the sky. Gruppe 11 takes no hits. The course holds for Fort Eben Emael. The pilot navigates without difficulty. Below, on the plateau, Oberfeldwebel Wenzel commands from Mi Sud. 9 Gruppen hold the captured positions. The artillery of the fort has been broken, silenced, or turned. Friendly Belgian shells are falling on the upper surface. Junker 87 dive bombers circle overhead on call. And the commander of Unternehmen Granit is at last approaching his fort. The last missing thread of Sturmgruppe Granit must be followed back in time to the first minutes after takeoff from Köln-Ostheim. Listeners will remember that airfield from our first episode. It is the same grass strip from which the entire glider stream lifted away in the pre-dawn hours of May 10th, 1940. It is also the airfield to which Oberleutnant Witzig, as we heard earlier in this episode, returns by bicycle and requisitioned staff car to secure his reserve, Junker 52. Shortly after the glider stream lifts away from Köln-Ostheim, the DFS 230 of Gruppe 2 is forced down. The Gruppe is commanded by Walter Meier, known as Pi Meier, because he served with the pioneers. The glider is piloted by Oberjäger Bredenbreck. About 10 minutes into the flight, an evasive maneuver to avoid a collision with the towing aircraft causes the tow rope to part. The glider makes an emergency landing near Soller, close to Düren. They are still deep inside Germany, nowhere near Fort Eben Emael. Their absence from the fort will have consequences we have already seen in this episode, above all at Cupola 120 and at Visay 1. On the ground, the Gruppe does not accept that its war is over. The occupants consider how they might still reach the fort overland. A lieutenant of Pioneer Regiment 22 persuades the owners of 2 civilian vehicles, Adler 2.5-liter cabriolets, to lend them to the Fallschirmjäger. None of the men knows how to drive. Their determination, nevertheless, outweighs every difficulty. 2 drivers from Organisation Tot are found, and the party sets off for Belgium. Oberjäger Bredenbreck remains behind to guard the abandoned glider. The 2 cars head for Maastricht. The journey is slow. The roads west are choked with lorries and long columns of German troop transports pushing for the invasion. The Fallschirmjäger force their way through the traffic. When they reach Maastricht, they find the bridges over the Maas have been destroyed. They cross the river in rubber dinghies alongside the first German infantrymen to reach the far bank. On the western side of the Maas, Gruppe 2 seizes a Dutch lorry from a market square. They drive the short distance south to Kana on the eastern bank of the Albert Canal. Kana is a name listeners will recognize from our first episode. It is the objective of Sturmgruppe Eisen, the sister operation to Granit. It is also the scene of one of the hardest fights of the entire day, where the bridge has already been blown in the face of the airborne assault. In effect, Meier's party becomes the first German ground troops to make contact with the paratroopers at Kana. Their sudden arrival comes as a shock to the Belgian defenders, who are preparing to engage the airborne troops already landed on the Opkana Heights. Shortly after entering the village, Gruppe 2 takes between 30 and 40 Belgian soldiers prisoner. Meier then pushes his Gruppe towards the canal. There he runs into a new obstacle. The bridge is gone. The rest of Sturmgruppe Granit is fighting on the superstructure of Fort Eben Emael, less than 2 kilometers away, on the far bank of the water, and Gruppe 2 cannot cross. Fire from Belgian strongpoints D and E, together with the casemates flanking the ruined bridge, sweeps the canal bank where Meier's men take cover. Max Meier is struck in the head by machine gun fire from the position commanded by Lieutenant Berlemont. He is killed instantly. Fritz Galisch confirms that nothing can be done for him. After this loss, Walter Meier decides to attempt a crossing of the canal alone. The waterway at this point is not wide. The debris from the destroyed bridge offers some concealment by breaking up movement in the water. Meier is known in the unit as Pi Meier because he serves with the pioneers. The rest of Gruppe 2 stays under cover while he goes in. He reaches the western bank. He proceeds on foot towards Eben Emael village. Avoiding contact with enemy forces proves easier than expected. His Fallschirmjäger uniform is not immediately recognized by anyone he passes. At the main entrance to Fort Eben Emael, he finds no guards. He moves on to Block 2, roughly 300 meters to the left of the main entrance. Block 2 is the same position that, earlier in this episode, was attacked and neutralized by Feldwebel Arent and his troop of Gruppe 3 after their work on Maastricht 1. On the way, Meier is forced to take cover during a Stuka attack. Block 2 is deserted. Meier now intends to return to Cannes, collect Gruppe 2, and lead them back across to Fort Eben Emael. When he reaches the canal again, he comes under fire from Belgian strongpoints D, E, and C. A second crossing is impossible. He withdraws back to Block 2. There, for the first time, he makes contact with another part of Sturmgruppe Granit. He encounters Oberjäger Harlos, commander of Gruppe 6, the same Gruppe that, as we saw earlier, has discovered that its northern objective is only a steel decoy and has shifted to defensive positions facing the Gier River. Re-establishing contact with his own Gruppe on the far bank proves impossible. Meier stays in cover at Block 2 and waits for nightfall. To understand what has happened by about 5:35 on May 10th, 1940, we have to leave the Fallschirmjäger on the roof and go down into the fort. We have to see the battle through Belgian eyes. Listeners of our first episode will remember what Fort Eben Emael is. It is the most modern fortress in Europe. Its garrison numbers around 1,200 men. Its armament is designed to break up any attack coming from the Maastricht Appendix or across the Albert Canal. What it is not designed for is an attack that lands on its roof. At the anti-aircraft position, the first seconds of the battle come as a hammer blow. One glider touches down near Cupola Nord. Another lands directly beside the anti-aircraft pits. Its wing strikes gun number 3 and knocks it over. Soldat Antoine throws himself flat into the pit just in time. The glider slides to a halt. Its door bursts open. German troops spill out onto the roof. The position is overrun within moments. Grenades detonate in the gun pits. Bursts of MP-38 fire sweep the position. One Fallschirmjäger leaps over the parapet of gun pit 4 and fires at point-blank range. The 3 Belgian gunners inside are struck where they stand. Soldat Marcel Boet is hit twice. Despite his wounds, he breaks away and runs for the fort to raise the alarm. Soldat René von Bonn is captured at the position. Soldat Adrian Heine is left for dead at the bottom of the trench. The communications shelter is raked with machine gun fire. Adjutant Longdos crawls out through the debris. Adjutant Remy is killed inside the shelter. The fighting here ends almost as quickly as it begins. The Germans control the roof of the anti-aircraft position. For Fort Eben Emael, the opening blow has landed. The real ordeal is only beginning. By 5:35, 10 minutes after the first glider landed, the fort is effectively blinded. The two Maastricht casemates are silent. Mi Nord is in German hands. Cupola Nord has been shaken by heavy charges. The anti-aircraft position is overrun. Mi Sud, the twin to Wenzel's objective, is under direct assault. Of the fort's offensive artillery, only Vise 2 and Cupola Sud remain capable of firing. At the center of the fort, inside the deep tunnels of the intermediate level, Major Jean-Fritz Lucien Jotrin is trying to make sense of what is happening above him. Heavy detonations echo through the corridors. Powerful blasts of air rush through the ventilation system, confirming that casemates and cupolas are under direct attack. Reports come in by telephone and by runner. The two Maastricht battery casemates are knocked out. Cupola Nord is neutralized. Both machine gun casemates are neutralized. The anti-aircraft battery is neutralized. There is no word from Adjutant Longdos, last reported at the hangar. For Jotrin, this is a new kind of battle. He does not yet have direct observation of his own roof. To obtain it, he orders the observer in Block 01 at the southern extremity to leave his post and climb out onto the surface to report on enemy activity despite the Junker 87s circling overhead. Jotrin does not wait for the report. He orders Sous-Lieutenant Verstraeten to take roughly 12 men from Blocks 1 and 2 and climb the eastern slope. The patrol reaches the crest. They observe at least one Fallschirmjäger on the roof of Block 2 preparing a hollow charge. The German fires the charge and withdraws before Belgian rifles can open. Stuka attacks, then force the patrol off the crest and back down the slope. This is the moment Fort Eben Emael learns what it has become. On the roof, Feldwebel Wenzel, as we saw earlier in this episode, is now in command at Mi Nord. By radio, he calls in the Junker 87s, which dive bomb casemates and cupolas that are not marked with swastika identification panels. The same panels that Gruppe 1's glider pilots laid out beside Maastricht 2 earlier in this episode. Major Jotrin reacts with anger to the dive bombing and orders Verstraeten to advance again. Once inside the fort, the patrol disperses and does not reform. With the enemy on the upper surface and his own troops pinned under concrete, Jotrin requests artillery support from the headquarters of the position Fortifié de Liège. During May 10th and May 11th, 1940, the 105mm guns of Forts Pontis and Barchon fire roughly 1,200 rounds at Fort Eben Emael. Belgian guns shelling a Belgian fort, because the Belgian fort is now crawling with Germans on its roof. As those shells begin to fall on the superstructure, listeners will remember from earlier in this episode what it costs. Oberjäger Unger, moving across the crest of the Tranchée de Kester with the remnants of Gruppe 8, is killed by a shell fragment. Only Obergefreiter Elsa and 2 other Fallschirmjäger reach Wenzel's command post. And that concludes today's episode. In this episode, part 2 of our coverage of Sturmgruppe Granit, we followed the airborne assault onto the upper surface of Fort Eben Emael on the morning of May 10th, 1940, from the moment the first glider touched down at 5:24 to the exhausted, dehydrated night the Fallschirmjäger spent in the captured casemates under Belgian artillery fire. In the opening minutes of the assault, 10 Gruppen of Sturmgruppe Granit were cast across the superstructure of the fort to neutralize its artillery cupolas, its machine gun blocks, its anti-aircraft position, and its observation posts. 2 Gruppen never reached the fort at all. Another 2 were drawn onto decoy turrets at the northern apex. Yet within 30 minutes, the most modern fortress in Europe was blinded. Its heavy guns were silenced, cratered, or turned against their own defenders. Its commander, Major Jean-Fritz Lucien Jotrin, ruled a garrison of around 1,200 men that could no longer see its own roof. Overhead, Stuka Junker 87 dive bombers worked on call. On the grass of the superstructure, 62 Fallschirmjäger held ground that had been designed to be unassailable, and for the first 2 critical hours, they did so under a commander who was never supposed to be in charge. Feldwebel Wenzel, acting in place of Oberleutnant Rudolf Witzig, whose own glider had been forced down over Germany and who, at the close of this episode, is still trying to reach his fort. We saw that fight from both sides. We saw the German pioneers at work on the armored cupolas with hollow charges, flamethrowers, submachine guns, and improvisation. We saw a wounded glider pilot walk back to his glider for a 50-kilogram charge, a Fallschirmjäger ride the rotating barrels of Cupola 120, and a Feldwebel answer a ringing Belgian field telephone inside a captured block in English. We saw the Belgian gunners of Fort Eben Emael, the officers and non-commissioned officers of the 1st Régiment de Grenadiers and the Régiment de Forteresse de Liège fight at their guns until the guns were torn from their mountings, their ventilation destroyed, or charges were dropped into the barrels. We saw Belgian artillery from Forts Pontis and Barchon fire some 1,200 rounds onto the superstructure of their own fortress, and we saw Walter Meier of the missing Gruppe 2 cross the Albert Canal alone at Rhine, twice, to try to reach his Gruppenführer. By nightfall, on May 10, 1940, the Fallschirmjäger on the roof held every major position that mattered. Below them, the Belgian garrison held the tunnels, sealed behind steel doors and sandbags. Between them, in the stairwells and ascent shafts, a silent division of the battlefield was in place. In the next episode, Oberleutnant Witzig at last takes command on his own fort. The relief forces struggled to cross the Albert Canal at Rhine. The charges on the ascent shafts go deeper into the interior, and Major Jotrand, in the command post beneath our feet, has to decide how much longer Fort Eben Emael can continue to resist. In putting this episode together, several works proved indispensable. James Mrazek's account of the assault on Fort Eben Emael provided essential operational context, as did Chris McNabb's study of the Belgian campaign in 1940. Alongside these, we drew on the post-operational accounts of Sturmabteilung Koch and the personal testimony of Oberleutnant Witzig. For maps, photographs, original documents, and the full source base behind this series, please visit www.worldwar2-sof.com. I'm your host, Michael Wires, signing off. And that concludes this mission briefing, fellow warriors of knowledge. We've navigated through the trenches of information, delving deep into the battlefields of history. As we wrap up this episode in our campaign for understanding, remember that knowledge is your most potent weapon. Stay vigilant and keep sharpening your intellectual arsenal. We'll rendezvous again for another episode, continuing our relentless pursuit of enlightenment. Until then, keep your mind sharp, your curiosity burning, and your determination unwavering. Simultaneously, you are hereby alerted to our outposts on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, fortifying our information dissemination. Should you possess any pertinent intelligence to bolster our mission, transmit your findings with no hesitation. Your contributions shall be prominently acknowledged within the operational archives. Furthermore, for those prepared to provide substantial reinforcement, navigate to our Patreon forward base and enlist. Your support is integral to sustaining our forward thrust. Carry forth the legacy. Dismissed.